Hi, and welcome back to another installment of our Food Garden Friday series called Let's Grow Vegetables in 2024. So if you've been following along, the first week we talked about sunlight and water, and then last week we had a pretty lengthy video. You may or may not have been able to make it through it, but we talked about different things that you could be planting in pots, raised beds, or in the ground. So we covered all of that last week, and then this week we are going to talk about what to grow and when to grow it. And so I bid you happy broccoli transplant day, also carrot direct seeding day, and you could also be starting seeds inside for peppers and tomatoes, among other things. So the reason that I know all of this is not because I have magical knowledge, but because of this, which we have printed copies of in our office at 155A Airport Road. We're also adding the links below for both of these documents that we've been talking about. But one of them is like gold for all of us gardeners out there. And the reason it is so special and important is because this document is a calendar. It is broken down by every month of the year, like you can see here, by the 1st and the 15th. So basically every 2 weeks for the entire year. And it also gives you, the crop, which I can't read backwards or see that very well, but all of the different crops are here, and it's going to tell you whether you need to direct seed it or transplant it. And so down at the bottom of this second page here, it says a note: B is for bulbs, C is for crowns, S is for seeds, T is for transplants, and TU for tubers. So an example of a tuber would be potatoes. On here, when we look at, potatoes, Irish potatoes, you can start putting those tubers in the ground. Oh, happy potato tuber in the ground day. So February 15th, you can start putting those potato tubers with eyes in the ground or in the pot if you happen to be growing them in pots. And so that's what the TU is for. C for crowns relates to asparagus. You can buy crowns for growing asparagus, and those can go in the ground at a certain time of the year too. So we're not going to go through every vegetable that's on this list, but I did want to make sure that you all knew about this resource, that you make sure you get your hands on it, that you get a printed copy of it, whether or not you stop by our office or you print your own copy. But this is really something to live by. It is specific for Eastern North Carolina, which is highly valuable because North Carolina State University has looked at the data and can tell us exactly when we need to be planting certain things. Now, as far as the transplants go, I do want to mention, let's go back to that first page. And at the beginning of this video, we said happy broccoli transplant day. So broccoli can be transplanted anywhere between February 15th, which I know is probably very hard for you all to see, but February 15th all the way through April 1st. So in my experience as a gardener in this area, I really love to get my broccoli, cabbage, collard, cauliflower transplants in at the earliest possible I can in that range of dates. If you've lived in Eastern North Carolina for any length of time, you know that by April 1st, it's starting to get pretty warm. And then all of a sudden by April 15th or the end of April, it is just getting hot almost. And so these crops that we just talked about, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, collards, are going to be very, very unhappy in those temperatures. So for me and my experience, I think that you are better off putting those in at the earliest range of those dates. Now, the opposite is true if you want to put in a fall crop of those plants because they have a range. Let me look at that again. The range at the latter part of the year is August 1st through September 15th. So again, if you've lived here any length of time, you know that August 1st is still ridiculously hot. And so it's not really a time when you would want to be putting plants in the ground. You can put them in the ground, but a lot of times they're going to be fairly unhappy until things kind of start to cool off. So I prefer to plant out my transplants on the later end of that range for fall crops. So I hope that gives you a good idea on that. So the other thing that it's time for is to be starting some seeds inside. So we're going to cover that in, I'm not sure if it'll be next week, but in the next couple of weeks, we're going to do a couple little videos and trainings on starting seeds inside. And I actually am in front of my grow lights right now because it's a little windy on the day I'm videoing this. So I'm upstairs in the glow of my grow rack. But so if you look at when to transplant on this calendar here, what it's going to tell you about some of our favorite crops is tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, but we're going to go with tomatoes. Tomatoes can be transplanted April 15th, okay? And that T means transplant, so we're not direct seeding tomatoes in the soil. That does not, research would tell us that that does not work as well, and that's really not what we want to be doing. So we want to be planting transplants in the ground. And of course, you can purchase those at various garden centers. But for a lot of the garden crazy people like myself, we like to have a greater variety of seeds and so that and plants and therefore plants. So what that means is you have to have seeds that you can start at your home under grow lights. And so the reason that transplant date is important of April 15th is because for this one, for example, that I have this mushroom basket tomato, the instructions on the back tell me to start indoors 6 to 10 weeks before last frost. And so our last frost here is typically between the end of March to that first part of April, but like the calendar says, and the best advice is to really wait until about April 15th to get them in the ground and not have any concern about frost hitting them. If you like to gamble, you can always put them in after the supposed last frost, but for the most part, April 15th is that suggested date. So if we come back 8 to 10 weeks, I'm sorry, this says 6 to 10 weeks, so it gives you a big range, but if you go back 8 to 10 weeks from that April 15th, we're there, February 15th, February, March, April. So you're looking at about 8 weeks at this point where if you started these seeds. Now, there is nothing wrong with starting them more like 6 weeks ahead of that time frame. You're still gonna be just fine. In fact, if you start them too early, they'll tend to get leggy and cause all sorts of other problems like where the heck are you gonna keep those plants until it's time to put them outside. That's a personal experience, little side note there. So some of these other ones, this one says to start 5 to 7 weeks. And then this one says 6 to 8 weeks. So you wanna read your seed packet and know, what's recommended for those start times. So again, we have a limited supply of these at our office, 155A Airport Road, if you would like a printed copy, but we've also included the links to both of them so that you can print them off. But that garden calendar is something to live by and will help you so much. You'll know exactly when to put a transplant in the ground, and you'll know exactly when to direct seed things. And there is so much that you can be direct seeding right now. So if you are getting really, really antsy about being able to get outside and be in the garden, just know that there's a lot that you could be planting at this time. So please comment below with any questions. Send us a message if you have any questions, and we'll be covering more about growing vegetables in 2024 in the next few weeks.